Hey guys, I'm in the middle of getting sick. Today I woke up with like a sore throat and then the urge to sneeze. Probably not anything that starts with a C, ends with a 9, I guess. But it's rough, and so my voice might be a bit off. Maybe not yet, but I'm gonna try and get this done before it is. Today we're reading Sea Bunnies, by the way. Yeah, that's what we're actually doing today. The widely called the worst story in Fazbear Frights so far. Um, this is Sea Bonnie's. It involves a toilet, Bonnie people, and a character named Mott. So, we're gonna have lots of fun today. Shall we begin? Mott lingered at the edge of the arcade in Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria, and contemplated why he still liked this place so much. Was it the decor? The food? The animatronics? No, the truth was that Freddy's, bright, loud, and always over the top, was just a fun place to be. He turned and surveyed the dining area stretching out from the arcade. Even the parents were having a good time. Technically, he should have been outgrowing this place, but Freddy's had a way of getting under his skin. This is good. We're starting with Freddy's. This is good. I approve of this so far. We don't usually actually have Freddy's in the more recent stories, interestingly enough. It's called Five Nights at Freddy's, remember? So, a bit weird that we don't have so many Freddy's related stories, but this is good. I like this so far. We'll see if that remains. Mott? Mott looked down at Rory, his spastic little brother. Can we get more tickets? Rory asked. I almost beat Ben at air hockey. I need a do-over. Mott reached out to ruffle Rory's bright red hair. Predictably, Rory, who recently turned 7 and was too grown up for things like hair ruffling, darted out of Mott's reach and said Mott in a way that turned one syllable into 3. Oh, let me try that again. Mott. I don't know. Mott. I don't know. Mott laughed and pulled a wad of dollar bills from his jeans pocket. Go beat the pants off him. Rory grinned and grabbed the money, then took off. On the stage that ran the length of Freddy's dining room, Freddy Fazbear and his cohorts, Bonnie and Chica, began a new song. A spinning disco ball overhead started spraying streams of yellow, red, green, and purple light all over the pizzeria. Mott tapped his foot and began singing along under his breath. Mott, a girl called out. He turned to look at the packed tables. A couple of 4- and 5-year-olds bumped into him as they went racing past. He smiled. Had he run around non-stop like that when he was their age? If he had, he could understand his mom's claim that he was responsible for 90% of the wrinkles forming on her still young face. Over here, the girl called again. Oh boy, time for another romance subplot. He saw a slender pink-nailed hand waving from a table a few feet away. It was Teresa, one of the more popular girls in his class. He grinned at her, glanced at once to check on Rory, and then sauntered over across Freddy's black and white checkered floor. Teresa shared a red cloth-covered, pizza and soda-laden table with the man and woman who had to be her parents. They all shared the same warm brown, almost amber eyes, though neither parent had Teresa's gorgeous smile. Her parents were turned away from her, talking animatedly with another couple at the next table. Mott heard something about golf and the cost of airfare. Mott turned his attention to Teresa. Friendly, smart, and petite, Teresa was what his mom called a catch. Though they shared English and algebra classes, they hadn't talked much outside of classes. Still, she always smiled at him in the hallways. Hey, Teresa. Hi, Mott. Are you here alone? Teresa gestured at the empty chair next to her, and Mott took it. A ponytailed server on roller skates zipped past with a fresh pizza. Aromas of tomato, basil, and cheese teased Mott's nose. His mouth watered. He hadn't eaten before he and Rory came here, figuring they'd get a pizza right away. But Rory had been obsessed with the game since they had arrived, and they hadn't ordered anything yet. Mott was getting so hungry that even the sickly sweet blue frosted birthday cake that sat near the stage was starting to look good. No, he said, I'm here with my little brother. He's friends with the birthday boy. Same here. My little brother, too. Which one's yours? Mott asked, mainly because he had no idea what else to say. Teresa pointed at a little boy who was dancing with a bunch of little kids next to the stage. Yours? She said. He looked over at the arcade. Rory's bright hair made him easy to spot. He and Ben had left the air hockey table and were charging this way. Rory probably wanted more money for tokens. Wow, really? He doesn't look like you, Teresa said. Mott wasn't sure what to say to that, so he just shrugged. But she was right. Rory got his red hair from their mother. Mott had their dad's plain brown hair, thankfully. Rory, with tufts of red that refused to lie down properly on his head, his over-large eyes and mouth, and face full of freckles, was always going to be kind of goofy looking. Mott, on the other hand, had been getting girls' stares long before he wanted to. Way to brag, man. That's a weird thing to say. When he turned 13, a few months before, he finally began to welcome all that attention. According to his mom, he was objectively good-looking. The components of this assessment, apparently, were his naturally wavy hair, his hooded dark brown eyes, his strong chin, and his great teeth. In the last couple months, he'd also shot up a few inches, and he'd started working out. His shoulders were getting broad. He was beginning to see what his mom saw. Apparently, girls like Teresa were seeing it too. "Don't let it get to your head," his mom had told him. "If you do, I'll ground you for the rest of your life." Yikes. Smiling at the memory, he said to Teresa, "On a good day, I'll admit Rory looks like our mom. On a bad day, I'll tell him he was left on our doorstep by sea monkeys." Rory raced up to the table just in time to hear what Mott had said. "I was not," he shouted. Then he stuck out his hand. "I want more tickets." Mott sighed and dug in his pocket for a few more dollars. He'd have paid several $100s to make Rory go away so he could keep talking to Teresa. Rory took the money Mott held out and ran off without saying thank you. Teresa laughed, then made a face. "I hate sea monkeys." Mott laughed too. "Exactly, creepy little things." He winked. "The real ones, not my brother." "Hold on, I've never seen a sea monkey. Let me just look that up real quick. Maybe I'll put a picture on screen, or maybe, if it's bad enough, I'll make you look it up yourself." I guess that's an integral part of this story, is sea monkey. I mean, it makes sense. I just didn't put two and two together when the story was called Sea Bonnies. They're not scary looking. I mean, they look like aliens, but I don't know. I guess we'll continue on. Fascinating. You learn something every day. Teresa shivered. "I know what you mean. The real ones are like centipedes with tentacles and tails." Freddy and his band segued into another cover of a popular song, this one with a rocking beat. Teresa scooted her chair closer to Mott. "This is a good song, don't you think?" Mott nodded. "I do, but I think I like this group's ballads. How do you pronounce that? I'm sorry, ballads better." He named another song by the same group who had originally done this one. Teresa bounced in her seat. "Oh yeah, that's a really good one. You like ballads? How do I not know how to pronounce that? That bothers me. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm gonna continue. I'm learning to play the guitar, and that's what I like to sing." "I'd love to hear you sing sometime," Mott said. Teresa beamed at him. Then he spent the next few minutes talking music, and Mott had pretty much forgotten where he was until he glanced up and saw Rory galloping over, bouncing off a couple other little kids and 2 tables as he went. He was grinning wildly, and he held up what looked like a new toy, something in bright-colored cardboard and plastic packaging. Rory was going so fast that when he got to the table, he plowed right into Mott and started to lose his balance. Mott grabbed his brother's arm and kept him upright. "Look what I got, Mott!" Rory half yelled, half screamed. He was only a few inches from Mott now, and Mott winced at the excessive decibel level. As he often did, he wished Rory had a volume control he could dial down. Rory's blaring announcement had gotten Teresa and her parents' attention. They all smiled at Rory as Mott asked, "What did you find?" Rory started waving around his treasure. He waved it so rapidly that Mott still couldn't tell what it was. He frowned, trying to read the words on the waving package. "Sea bonnies," Rory said. "I got sea bonnies, look." He kept waving the package. "I'm trying to look," Mott said. He reached out and snatched the package. Rory jumped up and down like he was on an invisible pogo stick. Mott focused on the package in his hand. Against a black-checked background, bright red letters announced that the package contained astounding live sea bonnies. Under the words, the image of a seriously disquieting little purple-blue creature that appeared to be a cross between a sea monkey and a rabbit was encircled by a bright blue blob of what appeared to be water. Next to the image, the package promised contains everything you need to know to grow and nurture your own sea bonnies. Beneath that, plastic sheathing covered 4 packets, designed to start your own healthy colony of happy sea bonnies. There were 2 packets of sea bonnie live eggs, one of sea bonnie water purification powder, and one of sea bonnie super duper growth food. At the bottom of the packaging, bright blue letters proclaimed, Guaranteed to live 3 years. Mott made a face and looked at Rory. Really? Rory was still hopping up and down. Now he giggled and shouted, "You said sea monkeys left me on the doorstep. Not sea monkeys, sea bonnies." Rory let loose with one of his high-pitched laughs. He clearly thought he was hilarious. He spun in a gleeful circle. "Now I can have some of my real brothers and sisters around." He laughed some more, quite pleased with himself. Mott shook his head. He felt Teresa leaning in behind him, and he showed her the package. "You," she said. He nodded in agreement. Rory plucked the package from Mott's hand. "They're awesome." "Sure they are," Mott said. "Okay, so that's the end of the scene. I will say, this story isn't so bad so far. It's just really interesting. Basically, I just wonder where they got this idea of sea bonnies. Like, that just seems like something totally random. I don't know. Whatever. It's an alright story so far. Just weird. As soon as Mott and Rory got home, Rory darted into the kitchen to find their mother, who was tearing up lettuce for a salad. Beef stew simmered on the 6-burner Viking range that was his mom's pride and joy. She loved to cook. Rory showed his mom the Sea Bonnie's package and started talking non-stop as he climbed up onto one of the wood stools in front of the granite-covered island where she worked. Their mom set the lettuce aside and began chopping tomatoes and cucumbers for the salad. For one blissful moment, all Mott could hear was the faint hum of the fan above the range, the intermittent tap of his mom's knife against the cutting board, and the delicious stew bubbling. But then Rory started jabbering, and all Mott could hear was his chatterbox of a brother. Rory waved his Sea Bonnie's package until under their mother's nose. She blinked at it, but kept working on the salad. Rory didn't seem to care. Sea Bonnies are basically like sea monkeys, but they're genetically engined, that's misspelled intentionally, I assume, to look like Bonnie. You know, Bonnie from Freddy's, Rory said. Mott and his mother exchanged a smile at Rory's version of genetically engineered. Rory kept talking. "They're super cool looking, and Fazbear Entertainment only came out with them last month. That's what Ben said. He usually buys all the new stuff, but his parents wouldn't let him get any sea bonnies because they said Pooter might eat him. And they didn't think that would be good for Pooter, and that wouldn't be good for sea bonnies either." He giggled wildly. Mott looked at his mom over the top of Rory's head. He shrugged. Wearing her usual stay-at-home clothes, black yoga pants and a baggy white shirt, his mom brushed a strand of red hair from her blue eyes. She scratched her freckled nose and smiled. "Pooter's the family cat, right?" his mom said. "Oh, yeah," Rory said. "Don't you think I should get a bigger fish tank now that Fritz is going to have friends? I mean, I know the small one fits on my desk, and the sea bonnies can help Fritz keep me company while I do homework and color and stuff. But if we got me a big tank with a stand, I could put it on the other side of the room, under the window. Oh, no, wait, what if we got a huge one, and we put it in the living room? Oh, no, wait, then I wouldn't have them in my room. I think I want them in my room. Maybe I could get more, and we could get 2 tanks, and..." While Rory talked, and Mott tried not to listen to him, their mom wiped her hands on a dish towel. She stepped over and gently put a hand over Rory's mouth. "Take a breath, sweetie," she said. "It's genetically engineered," Mott said, in the blessed quiet that suddenly filled the kitchen. "Not genetically engined." His mom gave him a look and shook her head. He rolled his eyes. She crossed the shiny wood floor to the stainless steel refrigerator and opened it to grab a bottle of salad dressing. "Do sea bonnies have the same water temperature requirement that Fritz has?" she asked. "Of course there's someone named Fritz in this, of course there is." Rory said, "Huh?" "May I see the package?" Mott asked Rory. Rory shrugged and handed it over. Mott scanned the instructions on the back of the package. He frowned. "Isn't it 74 degrees now?" His mother nodded. "The water needs to be 75 to 81 degrees for them to hatch. Then it can go back down. I wonder if cranking it up to like 78 or something would be okay for a goldfish for the 24 hours it takes to hatch the sea bonnie eggs." "Maybe you can research it after dinner," his mom said. Mott shrugged. "Sure, why not? That's what all the cool kids do on Saturday nights." She laughed. "No, that's what the cool kids wish they were doing. Instead they're going to boring things like movies and parties." "I feel sorry for them," Mott said. Rory, who'd been examining his sea bonnies with great pride and joy, suddenly pointed at a spot on the package. "What's that word?" Mott looked under his brother's dirty index finger. "Colony." "What's a colony?" Mott let his mom take that one. When she finished defining the word, Rory screwed up his face and announced, "I want an empire, not a colony. That's bigger, right? Maybe I should get another package of them. One package is enough, his mom told him. Rory squinted and took a deep breath, in clear preparation for a loud rebellion. Mott spoke quickly. You can call it whatever you want, you know. Rory tilted his head. I can? Absolutely, Mott and his mom said in unison. After dinner, and after determining that Fritz wouldn't be harmed by a day or so of 78-degree water, Mott helped Rory get his tank set up for the sea bonnies. Rory's tank was small, maybe 16 inches by 10 inches or so. It held 5 gallons, more water than Fritz needed, but Mott thought Fritz always looked content in his domain. Mott idly wondered what Fritz would think about the soon-to-be interlopers. Did Fish think... Lifting the tank's lid and waiting while Rory said hello to Fritz, Mott opened the sea bonnie packaging. Okay, the first step, he told Rory, is to put this in. He handed Rory the packet of water purifier. At Rory's insistence, he read the ingredients: salt, some kind of water conditioner, and some brine shrimp eggs. That's all we can do today. Mott told a frustrated Rory when his little brother wanted to dump all the other packets in, too. The instructions say to wait 24 hours. Then we'll put in the eggs. Those will be genetically engineered eggs. Why do we have to wait? Rory scowled. Mott shrugged. Because the packaging says so. He didn't bother telling Rory that the whole process was weird. He read the contents of the eggs packet, and he was surprised to see it also contained yeast, borax, soda, salt, and blue dye. What about this? Rory asked, holding up the food packet. Mott referred to the instructions. That goes in after the eggs hatch. I mean, duh. The food packet contained more yeast and some spirulina. I don't know what that is. It would have to be added every few days. Because Mott didn't trust Rory not to dump everything in the tank at once, he took the packets when he left Rory's room. Rory protested, but when he started to throw a tantrum, their mom appeared to smooth things over. Mott felt bad that she had to intervene. Their dad was a commercial airline pilot who was often away, which meant Mom had to run the house and do most everything at home. She also worked full-time at an event planning firm and was trying to start her own company in her spare time, of which she had little. To compound matters, most of the events she planned happened in the evening, and she had to be there to oversee them. Mott wasn't sure when his mom slept, and even with all that, she never acted annoyed when she was interrupted. Mom, Mott said, I'll get him ready for bed. Go rest. You're sure? She asked. Sure. You're a good son, his mom said. I know, he laughed. With just a little wheedling, Mott got Rory into the bathroom to wash his teeth. Brush his teeth. I mean, same thing, but you know what I mean. While he brushed, Rory chattered about school and his friends and the new puppy that Daddy and his family had gotten a couple weeks before. Toothpaste shot all over the place as Rory talked. Used to this routine, Mott wiped down the counter and the floor. Eventually, Rory spit the remainder of his toothpaste into the sink. Mott used a wet washcloth to wipe Rory's face. Rory wriggled out of his reach. I want a puppy, Rory said. When's Dad coming home? He's doing non-stops this week, Mott said. He'd opted for answering the second question first. It was easier. I think he'll be home for a few days next week. Maybe he'll get us a puppy while he's home, Rory said. Maybe Mom will get us a puppy when you demonstrate a little responsibility. Rory twisted his lips in concentration. How do I do that? Mott considered what he could get away with. Well, maybe if you cleaned up your room, didn't yell so much, and stopped interrupting me and Mom whenever Rory shouted, No, I know what I can do. Shh. Rory lowered his voice to just above normal volume. I can help Danny with Da Pup. Da Pup? Mott repeated. That's the puppy's name. His dad kept asking, Where's Da Puppy? And his mom said they might as well call him that. His whole name is Da Puppy, but they call him Da Pup. Danny likes to follow Da Pup around and say over and over, What's up, Da Pup? Rory giggled gleefully. Mott laughed. He couldn't help it. Rory was a lot of annoying things, but he was also entertaining as all get out. Apparently, so were Danny and his family. Okay, Mott said, let's get you to bed. Following Rory into his room, Mott shut Rory's bedroom door so Rory's jibber-jabber didn't bother their mother. Now Danny's bugging his parents for a kitten, Rory went on. He wants to name it Da Cat or Da Kitten. Rory launched himself toward his bed, spun in midair, and landed on his back. He kicked his legs in the air like an upturned beetle and let out another trill of giggles. Where are your PJs, Goofus? Mott asked. Rory sat up, his eyes dancing. He grabbed his pillow. Under the bed, Doofus. Mott bent over to look under his bed, and a pillow hit him in the side of the head. He rose to find Rory looking at the ceiling and whistling. Mott glanced around as if searching for something. A pillow just hit me in the head. I wonder where it came from. Rory giggled. Did it come from under the bed? Mott asked. He stuck his head under the bed and spotted green and yellow dinosaur-patterned PJs. As he reached for them, another pillow struck his shoulders. Mott whipped his head out from under the bed and jumped to his feet, feigning shock and outrage. He dropped the PJs on the bed. Another one? Is there an invisible pillow thrower in the room? He whirled in a circle, wearing a fierce expression as Rory giggled louder. Show yourself, you pillow-throwing milksop! Mott leaned over and picked up the thrown pillows. I'll beat you in a fair fight if you have the metal. He struck a warrior pose, both pillows raised. Rory, struggling against a rising tide of giggles, shouted, What's a milksop, and why does he need metal? Mott cocked his head. Hark, methinks these questions are a misdirect. He glowered at Rory. Dost thou do the pillow-thrower's bidding, young lad? Are thee in cahoots with the namby-pamby? Rory laughed so loud he snorted. He reached for the only remaining pillow on the bed. Mott turned his back to Rory and pretended to look for the pillow-thrower again. The third pillow hit him in the back. Outrageous, he bellowed, leaning to pick up the latest pillow. He rotated to face Rory. I have no chance but to unleash my retaliation upon thine own countenance, young minion of the invisible pillow-thrower. Making sure he didn't throw too hard, Mott fired all 3 pillows at Rory, who dove under the covers, laughing and shrieking. Mott fell on him and started tickling him. Rory shrieked and laughed louder. Dost thou surrender? Mott asked. Rory gasped. Yes, yes! His breath smelled like peppermint toothpaste. Mott stopped tickling his brother. Rory, his face flushed, his eyes wet with happy tears, grinned up at Mott. You didn't answer my question. Mott reached for the PJs, which had landed on the floor again during the roughhousing. What? Oh, you mean milksop and metal. Rory nodded. Mott handed Rory his PJs. Put these on. A milksop is someone who is indecisive or doesn't have courage. It comes from how little kids used to sop up milk with their bread. Rory frowned, then nodded. I like that word. And it's M-E-T-T-L-E, not M-E-T-A-L, Mott said, as Rory pulled on his PJ top. Metal, he spelled it again, means the ability to cope with difficulties, someone who can bounce back from an attack easily. Rory exchanged his jeans for PJ pants. That's another good word. I agree, Mott said. Let's get you under the covers. Rory yawned and crawled under the covers, head first. Mott rolled his eyes. Turn around, goofus. Rory giggled from under the covers. He rotated and his tousled head appeared. What's namby-pamby? Mott helped Rory get situated in bed. It's another word for milksop, but it means someone without much strength. I'm not a namby-pamby or a milksop, Rory said. No, you aren't, Mott agreed. Man, Mott knows his vocabulary. He's got a lot of words in his head. Anyway, Mott got home late on Monday evening. He and his best friends, Nate and Lyle, had to work on a science project, and they'd met at Nate's house to work on it. Nate's dad, Dr. Tabor, also known as Dr. T, was a pediatrician who had been Mott's doctor since Mott was a baby. Nate and Mott had been friends because they met at Dr. Tabor's office when they were about 2. Dr. T's wife, an engineer, had an important meeting that day, so Dr. T had brought his son in to work with him. Nate and Mott had taken over the blocks in the waiting room play area, building an impressive fort that none of the other kids in the waiting room were allowed to touch. Dr. T had told Mott's mom that the boys' friendship was clearly meant to be, and suggested the parents get together for dinner while the kids had a play date. Or at least, that's what Mott's mom told him. He didn't remember any of it. All he knew was that his parents were good friends with Nate's parents. And he was good friends with Nate. His earliest memory of Nate was the 2 of them trying to climb up on a counter to steal freshly baked cookies. They'd both ended up in Dr. T's office with contusions and mild burns from the hot cookie sheets. Not that Mott remembered that either. He just remembered the chair ladder they built, and he remembered a lot of pain. Over the years, Dr. T had become like a dad to Mott. Dr. T believed that work and home life should be properly balanced. And so he opened his clinic near the neighborhood, close to the end of the green belt that ran past the back of Mott's house. Dr. T started working really early, but he never worked late, never worked weekends, and he was always ready and willing to play or help with school. Tonight he was helping the boys get started on their science project, which was a study of the effects of antibiotics on microorganisms. Having access to a doctor came in handy. Dr. T had gotten a small amount of 4 types of antibiotics: penicillin, streptomycin, aeromycin, and teramycin. Whew. He'd also gotten a syringe, a petri dish, flasks and beakers, and some pipettes. Mott and his friends had been tasked with getting everything else they'd need: a potato, agar, dextrose, distilled water, garden soil, and pens that would write on glass. When they'd complained about the agar and dextrose, "What in the heck are those?" Nate had asked his dad. Dr. T had gotten them too. Dr. T and Nate had already done 99% of the experiment. Lyle was bored out of his mind and mostly tried to make music with the pipettes and beakers. Mott wasn't bored, but he was puzzled by the complex process, what with this being heated and that being mixed in. Thanks to Dr. T, he did eventually understand what they were doing, and he was looking forward to seeing what microorganism colonies grew in the petri dish they'd set next to the heat register in Nate's house. They had bets going on which antibiotics would keep the colonies from growing. 2 cheeseburgers and a milkshake on penicillin, Nate said. "I'll take that bet," Lyle said, "if we throw in a couple large fries. How about you, Mott?" "I'm with Nate," Mott said. Lyle rolled his eyes. "Well, then if you're wrong, it had better be 2 milkshakes." "You're going down," Nate said. Mott laughed with his friends and said good night. He biked home a little after 9 when it was dark. When he pulled his bike into the garage, Rory met him at the door leading into the kitchen, flailing around in excitement. "Come look, come look!" Mott followed his exuberant brother up the stairs and down the long hallway, pausing only to drop his backpack in his own room. When they went into Rory's room, he pointed and stomped back and forth in front of his desk, as if performing a ceremonial dance on the strewn clothes and toys all over his blue shag rug-covered floorboard. "Look!" he shouted. Mott stepped over a plastic cement truck, a cardboard castle, and 2 spaceship models to stand before Rory's fish tank, which sat on Rory's desk, surrounded by a clutter of schoolbooks, coloring books, puzzles, and crayons. Even partially hidden by all the piles, it was clear that the tank no longer contained just water and Fritz. It was now filled with wriggling shapes. Mott leaned over to get a closer look. He immediately wished he hadn't. Straightening, Mott rubbed away at the goosebumps that had just erupted all over his forearms. "Oh, this is just wrong." "Aren't they great?" Rory asked. Mott rolled his eyes. "You're a seriously weird little kid. What are you, part sea monster? Are you part—" He gulped loudly. "Creep from the deep beyond?" Rory stopped stomping in glee and turned to frown at Mott. "What do you mean by that?" Although he leaned away from the tank, Mott hadn't been able to pull his gaze from the disgusting thing swimming around the goldfish in the tank. The sea bonnies had hatched. Dozens of them. No, make that hundreds. They looked like semi-translucent, fleshy, pale, bluish-purple rabbits with tiny black eyes and almost microscopic furry tentacles lining their bodies. From what Mott could tell, they appeared to propel themselves through the water using their misshapen rabbit ears. Rory tugged at the hem of Mott's brown polo shirt. "Huh?" Mott said. "Why do you say that? Why do you say I'm part sea monster?" Rory punched Mott's leg hard enough to make Mott grimace. "That was mean." Ignoring his brother's upset, Mott pointed to the sea bonnies. "You actually like these things?" he asked. Rory turned to look at them. His hurt feelings forgotten, he grinned. "Sure, they're super coolio." Mott crossed his arms. "Rory, they're disgusting." "They are not." Rory kicked out at Mott and barely missed Mott's shin. "That's not nice to say things like that. You're going to make them feel bad." He reached out to the fish tank and stroked the glass like he was trying to soothe his mutant pets. "Whatever," Mott scoffed. He started to turn away and leave the room, but an abrupt movement in the tank yanked his gaze back to the sea bonnies. He lifted his eyebrows. The sea bonnies had moved in a giant cluster to where Rory's hand had brushed against the side of the tank. Fritz still swam lazily to the far side of the tank, but the sea bonnies were all together near the glass under Rory's hand. It was like they were responding to his gesture. The goosebumps reappeared on Mott's arms. He shook his head, annoyed with himself for being unnerved by this tiny, deviant brine shrimp. Their movement must have been some kind of reflexive response to motion or shadow, he figured. He turned toward the door to Rory's room. "Apologize," Rory said. Mott stopped and gave Rory a look. "To you or your swimming freaks there?" Rory put both his fists on his skinny hips. "Both." Mott laughed at his brother. A burbling sound came from the fish tank, and Mott's attention returned to it. He blinked and stared. Although Fritz still floated toward the back of the tank, the sea bonnies had shifted so they were lined up in a disturbingly ordered formation along the front of the fish tank. He couldn't tell for sure because they were so small, but from where he stood, it looked to Mott like all the sea bonnies were facing forward, looking at him. Mott swallowed hard and took a step back. Obviously, the sea bonnies weren't in any sort of formation, and they weren't looking at him. That wasn't possible. "Mott, say you're sorry," Rory yelled. "What's going on in here?" Mott turned to see his mom standing in the doorway of Rory's room. She had a blue laundry basket full of folded clothes propped against her waist. Rory charged over to her and threw his bony arms around her thighs. He spewed out his grievance so fast that all his words hunched up together. "Mott called me a sea monster and he insulted my sea bonnies. He said they were disgusting. He was mean. He won't apologize." Mott's mom used her free hand to pat Rory's shoulder. She looked at Mott over the top of Rory's head and raised out one eyebrow. Mott knew that look. It said, "You're not wrong, but can you humor your little brother?" He sighed and nodded. "Rory?" Rory sniffed and turned to frown at Mott. Mott squatted to look Rory in the eye. "I'm very sorry I insulted you and your friends. I was just kidding, but I shouldn't have kidded you that way." He noticed that Rory had a smudge of chocolate at the corner of his pouty lips, and several blonde crumbs in the front of his green and blue striped shirt. His breath smelled like the chocolate chip cookie he had clearly snuck from the kitchen. Mott reached out and cleaned up both crumbs and chocolate with his thumb. Rory squirmed away and said begrudgingly, "It's okay." Mott glanced at the sea bonnies. He realized that he was checking them because he wanted to see if his apology had mollified them any more than it had his brother. They were swimming around in the tank exactly as you'd expect sea monkey-like creatures to do. He must have imagined their earlier behavior. But why would he have done that? Was he that freaked out by the abnormal little creatures? He rotated back to his mother. "Can I help you with any of that?" He waved a hand at the laundry basket. She flashed him a smile. "I've got it. Go ahead. I assume you only worked on science at Nate's, right?" Mott nodded. She was right. He still had more homework to do. Mott started to leave the room, but he hesitated when he heard his name being whispered. He looked back at his mom, who was tucking socks into one of the drawers in Rory's dresser. "Did you say something?" he asked her. She looked over at him. "No." He stepped into the hallway, and he heard it again. A whisper. "Mott." "Ooh, spooky." And more. This time, he also heard "scaredy cat." He whirled and glared at Rory. "What did you just call me?" Both Rory and their mom widened their eyes at Mott. "What in the world, Mott?" He frowned. "Rory didn't just... I'm not doing something wrong," Rory said. "Anything wrong?" his mom said automatically. To Mott, she said, "What did you think you heard?" He shook his head. He had to have been imagining things. Suddenly, he realized that the whisper he'd heard hadn't been his mother's or his brother's voice. And come to think of it, the whisper hadn't been a single whisper. It had sounded like several whisper tones coming in unison. Mostly together, but just slightly off, resulting in a faint echo. It couldn't be. He glanced at the fish tank. The sea bonnies were swimming around aimlessly until he looked. Then they suddenly swam to the other end of the tank as a unit. They all looked through the glass at him. He opened his mouth to ask his mom if she was seeing what he was seeing, and he immediately realized what a bad idea that was. Pull it together. Their brains aren't big enough to understand complex speech, let alone generate it. Instead, he returned to his room. Clearly, he needed some sleep. After closing his door, Mott stared at the doorknob for an uncomfortable moment. He locked it. The next morning, Rory was a dither because he couldn't find his lucky striped socks, which he had to wear because he and his best friend Danny were going to have a swing-off during recess. "And this is more important than me preparing for my algebra quiz," Mott muttered as he pawed through Rory's drawers in frustration. "Not to mention getting to talk to Teresa before class," he thought. He heard a whispered response to his internal dialogue. "Ooh, ASMR with Chris time. As if a girl would pay attention to you." Mott whipped his head towards Rory, but Rory wasn't even in the room. Mott was in here alone. Or not. He turned toward the fish tank. Sure enough, the sea bonnies were all clustered at the end nearest to Mott. They were watching him again. Before he knew what he was doing, he spat back, "You're just glorified fish bait." Rory ran into the room. "What'd you say?" He held up one of his striped socks. "This was in the hamper. I don't know where the other one is, though." Ungluing his eyes from the fish tank, Mott noticed his heart rate had picked up. He swallowed and said, very slowly and very calmly, "Why don't you go check Mom's room? Maybe your socks got mixed up with hers by mistake. When I'm done looking in here, I'll check my socks." "Okay." Rory scampered out of the room. Mott looked at the sea bonnies, and he flinched. The water in the fish tank was choppy. He could hear it sloshing, and he could see bubbles shooting up through the middle of the tank. The sea bonnies were agitating, as a group, as if they were. Mott strode out of Rory's room, and he ran right into Rory. "Oof!" Rory grunted loudly. He bounced off Mott and grinned. "Look!" He held up a pair of striped socks, not his own, but similar in color. "Mom's letting me wear her lucky socks. She said they're even luckier than mine." Mott tried to talk, but couldn't. He was too busy processing what he'd just seen. Rory didn't seem to notice. He went around Mott and dropped to the floor to put on his mother's socks. Mott's head was suddenly throbbing. He rubbed his temple. Could simple organisms like sea bonnies even get angry? Because that was what it had looked like in Rory's tank. It had looked like the sea bonnies were reacting to his insult. And before that, it had sounded like they'd been taunting him again. "Mott?" His mom came up behind him and put her hand against his forehead. "You feel warm. Are you coming down with something? Do you want to stay home from school?" "No." Ah, there was his voice. His mom raised her eyebrows. Okay. Wow, I must have the weirdest teen in recorded history. I gave him a chance to skip school, and he jumps down my throat. Mott coughed and moistened his teeth with his tongue. "Sorry, Mom, I didn't mean to snap at you. It's just that—" His mom's phone rang, and she raised a finger. Thankful for the reprieve, Mott went into his room to get his backpack. Rory thundered in behind him. "I'm going to take Danny down," he announced. He flexed non-existent muscles and puffed his cheeks. And I think that's where we'll stop for now. Kind of a random place, but I've been going for a while. And I am definitely getting sick. So maybe I don't know when I'll do this next one, but this will only be uploaded once all the parts are ready to go, I think. I have a couple videos ready in advance at the time I'm recording this, so by the time this is out, like, the next part should be ready. So you don't need to worry. It won't be long. I'm just gonna see. Maybe I'll ride this out first. I can afford to. I've got time. You'll get the video probably in like 2 days. Thank you guys for listening. This story is weird. Again, it's well written, but the idea is just unnecessary. I mean, we don't need sea bonnies. It just feels like they're filling space. Like, we don't need a story about fish creatures. This isn't a FNAF story. I think it's well written and it's interesting, I guess, but I don't know. It's not FNAF. Not really. I'll still keep reading it because I'm enjoying it, but like, it's not really what I want in this series. And I mean, that's kind of petty. They can write whatever stories they want, but that doesn't mean I have to read them. I mean, I'm still going to, but that's just because I've committed this far. There's 2 more books. Why not continue? But yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of these latest stories. But yeah, I don't know. Friendly Face was pretty good. There's still some good ones in the bunch, and, that makes it better. But Sea Bonnies is pretty weird so far. Alright, that's about it. I'll see you guys soon in part 2. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.